After October 5th, 6th, 7th in this range, we're gonna start seeing upside movement for sure. Well, not for sure, but that's what my projection is. Things are looking good for Bitcoin and altcoins to start moving up after.
Welcome to Investing Insights with Ben. My name is Ben, 13 years in market and nearly 5 years trading full-time. My edge comes from cycles, spotting when stocks and crypto are primed for big moves. Combine technical analysis, order book flows, and even astrocycle studies to time entries and exits with precision. The goal? 5% to 10% portfolio gain per month consistently. And returns that beat broader market and even hedge funds. If you want timely strategies you can apply right now, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss the next setup.
Hello and welcome back to Investing Insights with Ben. This is your host Ben, and I am very excited to share some information with you guys as we approaching some times to start buying stocks, crypto, and there's some looking like good times ahead. So let's get into it. Let's start off with Bitcoin this time. So we discussed last week that we were expecting some correction in Bitcoin starting, like I always say that these dates are not perfect. These are just giving you an estimate that between this range there could be some downside or some sideways chop. It's just basically not a good time for Bitcoin to go up. So what happened following the 16th of September is Bitcoin started coming down, and today it came down to as low as 112,000. And I'm expecting that starting sometime this week, we should start seeing some upside movement, but it will eventually come back down again. And it'll come down to October 5th, 6th, 7th, and somewhere in that range. It'll come down. And possibly, if we don't go down more this week, then maybe next week we will go down even further. So what do I mean by that? Right now, we only touched about $112,000. Well, there is actually, we look at some data, order books, we look at the actual standard deviation of price, and both are calling for around $105,000, $107,000 range. So there's a high probability that we actually will see those prices. Now, it's just mathematical calculation. It's just the order book that people are, or the institutions are putting their money at that level. That doesn't mean the price has to go there. Price can start shooting up any day. So that's why we always look at our indicators. And if the indicator says that it's going up, then you better be with the indicator and not worry about those levels and not worry about those dates. So these are just for you to understand that we can see some downward movement. And when you see, again on the stochastic RSI, when you see the movement starts coming down, a blue line crosses the orange line to the downside, that means the momentum is to the down, and your dates were calling for it, and your order books were calling for it, and your any other information that you have is calling for it. And you can look in the standard deviation, which you don't have to. I'll give you those data, those numbers, and what's your downside target. And there's single, 1 deviation, 2 deviation, 3 deviation, and you can see price has touched this, and looks like there's some turning around happening at that time. So that's when you start buying, basically. And then you can go to lower time frame, and you can see a 4-hour time frame is crossing. Maybe that was the low. So that's where you start buying and you go with the flow of the market. But again, I started buying. I don't know if those levels will be touched or not, but these are levels that are actually good buying levels. And it could go down further again. If Bitcoin goes to 105, altcoins might go even lower than where they are and at a higher percentage. So my strategy is that I'm buying some altcoins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Litecoin, you name it, right? So all these major coins I'm buying this week, and maybe some smaller altcoins as well. And then I'm gonna keep some more powder so that if next first week of October, the market comes down further, coins are at even better prices, then you have more money to put in at those prices. and use the indicator. Stochastic RSI is what I have my own indicator. We look at different things just besides the momentum, but all you need is basically momentum RSI indicator to trade. If you look at the weekly RSI, it's crossing over, it's already at the bottom. So we are in that range where we're going to have to start buying. Look at what happened last time, right? You were in this range, it chopped around for a few weeks. That's what's happening right now. And then when eventually it crossed over, you were at $85,000. And then the next cross came at 106. So you had good 20+% that you could have gained right there. And if you were in alts, there's probably more you would have gained. It happens every time. Look at this, right? It chopped around, but when eventually it crossed over, it went from 59 to all the way to 105. So you could look at the cross, right? So somewhere in this range. So good buying opportunity. Again, so let's go back to daily. After October 5th, 6th, 7th in this range, we're gonna start seeing upside movement for sure. Well, not for sure, but that's what my projection is. Things are looking good for Bitcoin and altcoins to start moving up after the first week of October. Now let's look at the SPX, the stock market. There's some deviation that's happening. So we expected some downside or sideways movement from the 15th, 16th, that range to about 25th. And look what happened. It came down a little and then it started going back up again. So what do? You look at the 4-hour time frame. It started coming down, started separating, and then it started separating again to the upside. And you look at 8-hour time frame, started coming down, but eventually, right away, it started moving back up. So what do? You don't stay in shorts if you opened any shorts. You start going with the flow of the market. And I did some work over this weekend, and I think I know what's happening. So these dates, what they basically mean is there's a cyclical period that is matching this date and this date. So what that means is previously on, let's say the cycle, you're looking at 100-day cycle, you're looking at 41-day cycle, you're looking at 41-week cycle, you're looking at 168-day cycle. So it could be any different cycles you could be looking at. And we have multiple cycles that match these dates. And what happened on those dates, let's say 168. So 168 days ago and plus 168 days ago and plus 168 days ago, or a combination of those, there were pivots that happens one after the other. That means when those dates hit again, you expect a pivot. Pivot means the price of the stock market's going to go change its direction on those dates, right? Close to that date. So that's why I had this date mentioned here. But what happened is started pivoting and then it started moving back up again. So don't worry about this, right? Don't worry about this date. Maybe it didn't work out. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll start coming back down again to the end of this week. But we're not trading because Ben said there could be a pivot here or Ben said there could be a pivot here. You wait and see if there is actually a pivot, and then you want to get in shorts, you can, or you want to save your profits, you can. But if the market shows you that that pivot was not strong enough, then you start going with the flow of the market. I cannot tell you this. This is so important because as soon as I saw this happen, I got in longs and I have more position than even I had them here. It's because not that I'm strongly bullish on the market, but the reason being I started positions in gold. I started positions in utility sector. I started positioning in other sectors, energy sector that are actually looking great right now. And that usually happens when the market is expecting some downside movement. And that it will eventually come. And I'm believing, so I'm gonna change this to exactly to that date. I'm expecting a pivot here. It could be a downside pivot, and then this will eventually go to right around that same time frame that we're expecting Bitcoin to have a second bottom. And then from there on, Bitcoin and stock market both will start going up. So again, don't worry, Buzz. Just keep those dates in mind, the 25th and the 6th or 7th. And if you start seeing the stochastic RSI starting to show you downside movement, that's what's happening. Those dates, those pivot dates worked out fine. These two things I wanted to share. Again, keep an eye on utility sector, consumer staples. They're supposed to do really good as well in coming weeks. It's going to pivot in coming weeks. And then look at gold and gold miners I got back in last week. It's not going to be a very long-term play. It's a shorter-term play. But when you have some downside movement, it'll protect your capital and you can have some gains from gold and gold-related stocks, energy stocks, utility stocks, consumer staples. So that's that. Now let's look at some of our trades. We looked at Dollar Tree last week. That was the position that I have. It's chopping around. I actually let go of half of my position because it started, if you look at the daily time frame, it started coming down. You want to protect your capital. If it's showing you that it's coming down, you get out. Then I need a little stronger signal for me to put that position back in, because so far this movement, sometimes when it crosses 50% or not 50%, 50 mark, that's when the bigger push comes. But right now you see this, the most traded price here is about $99. It's having a hard time reclaiming that level. So I'm not desperate to make Dollar Tree work. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll wait, right? And then we'll look at the weekly time frame and then see what's going on at weekly time frame. It's showing signs. And when it crosses over, maybe I'll put the rest of my position back in and make it a full position. But right now I have a half position here. Then we looked at CME Group. I think CME started moving up. Let's take a look. From our entry, about this price range, it is up a few percent points. Not a huge move so far. The RSI, stochastic RSI, is going up. Overall RSI is still down. That means it's still not at a high condition or anything like that. If you look at the weekly time frame, I think the weekly is about getting ready to cross over. Let's take a look. Yeah, so this week we might actually, if it continues with some upward momentum, we might see a crossover, and that could be it for a nice move up. But so far, CME is looking good. HDFC Bank. HDFC had a nice move up and then it started coming back down again. Again, it's still very early stage, as we're expecting this stock to do well for another month or so. Or not do well, but there's a upward movement between this dates. So daily went over, now it's actually crossing down. So the momentum is to the downside. Again, remember, sometimes it'll go up, come down, and then from the middle, it'll start going back up again. But let's not assume anything. Let's just look at the charts. Let's look at the RSI and then make a decision from there on. Look at the weekly. The weekly is looking really good. This is where we had the crossover. That was the end of last week. So we're in good shape. We're believing that the stock can do good. There was, if you see, there was some, it went up quite a bit and then there was a price down. But overall, the close is not bad. It's actually, we had a higher close last week. So we're in good shape. There are other stocks. I have like 25 positions. So I don't know how many positions you want to know about. But thinking about positions like BMNR, which is the Tom Lee's company that is working on Ethereum. They're buying Ethereum. They're doing basically what MicroStrategy did. The price, I had this stock for a while. I made good gains on it, and then it came back down. So let's look at the BMNR. I am going to be honest. I'm not trading this with my cycles. I'm solely trading this on the fact that Ethereum might bottom soon, and then when it goes up, Bitmine is going to be a leveraged bet on Ethereum. And when it goes up, Ethereum goes up 10%, this thing can go like 10% in Ethereum, could be like 50% in BMNR. But remember, when when Ethereum comes down, this comes down hard and fast as well. So you can see we literally entered like somewhere in this price range, and then we drove all the way up, and then it started showing us signs down. So I got out again. And then we got back in again when the stochastic RSI started moving up, and then we're out of that position again. So now somebody in my contacts, he's asking me, he's like, should we get back in? Should we get back in? Because he doesn't want to not be in BMNR. So, but if you look, I don't trade based on emotions. I trade based on the facts. So right now, BMNR is coming down. It's showing signs of turning down, and so we're out of that position. So once it comes down, turns back around at different time frames to be certain, and then ride it back up. And again, this might happen this week or next week, but it will turn back around, and it can give you good gains. Circle, CRCL, is another one with the basically similar strategy that I'm using. Besides that, I think everything as far as the higher time frame, everything's looking good. There's no big change of plan. We're expecting market to do very well in October. September is usually a bearish month in stock market and crypto. So far, September has done well for stock market, but not so good for crypto, and I'm expecting that we're going to see some correction. It happens a lot in September that when the first half of September stock market goes up, the second half comes down. So that's what we're expecting, that there's going to be some correction towards the end of September, maybe first week of October, and then we're off to the races. Overall, at a larger time frame, we are still looking at the market as a topping market. A lot of people are calling it a bubble. I think it is a bubble, but bubbles take time to burst, and we're not expecting that bubble to bust in the next month or so. It's gonna be few months. Like I said, 2026, watch out. 2026 can be brutal, but it's too far ahead. I don't want to start scaring you or anything like that. When time comes, I'll give you an update. I'll tell you what I'm strategizing, what my strategy is when I'm getting out of the market, and what I'm buying, because stocks, you don't have to be out of them. You just have to pick the right sector. All right, cheers guys. That's it for today. I will be updating more than once a week. I'm going to give you updates as I see any changes in the market, and I'll make sure that I do smaller videos as well, so you don't have to watch 20-minute or 30-minute videos. You get quick updates. Again, if you want me to look at any stocks, any crypto, put it in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to look at the charts for you and give you some dates. All right, cheers. That wraps up this episode of Investing Insights with Ben. Remember, timing is everything. Hedge comes from discipline, not luck. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the setup that can move your portfolio.